When you get to a certain level in an organization, everyone says your skills are transferable. But what happens if you're only going to be in a job for 2 or 3 years? What skills do you need and when? We're on location with Romanella, and welcome to the Language of Business.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Rocky, most of your advisory work has happened over a 2 or 3 year period. What happens at the end of your term?
Well, I think it depends on the advisory board you're on, but most are startup companies. And so what ends up happening is you're helping them in that startup phase. You're helping them start to develop that answer. Who are we? What do we stand for? What are the things we're not going to compromise as an organization? What are we trying to create here, in this startup situation? And you're helping them through that process. At some point, then they become an organization that may need a board. And so what ends up happening is that a role and responsibility transitions into more of a traditional board responsibility.
So let's talk about that a little bit more. What metrics or measurements do you use to determine what types of advisory services they need, when it's time to transition from an advisory board to a formal director board and stuff of that ilk?
Well, I think what ends up happening is you really start to dive into the strategic plan. And where are you with that strategic plan? And what are the milestones that were set? For example, in the early days, you're raising capital, you're making sure you have what you need from a working capital perspective to grow the business. And then you start to hit those stage gates. Okay, we're break even. Took us 18 months, and now we're beginning to grow our business. And so what are the next steps in that growth? And are you starting to hit those metrics that you laid out when you put together the strategic vision of the organization?
The focus of this episode is on mentorship. Let's turn the light to the other side of the table. How are your advisees evaluating your skill as a mentor?
That's a great question. And I think it's important that you want to be a mentor and that you take that role and responsibility of mentorship very personal, and you take it as a responsibility that you are proud to do and you want to do. I think that's important. So very similar to when you're mentoring an individual, you're mentoring an organization, and you're going through those saying, what are our strengths as an organization? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities for growth? And frankly, what are the barriers that could potentially prevent us from achieving those goals? And I'll tell you one real quick that always seems to come up, and that's the concept of allowing your strengths to become your weakness. For me, for example, would be I'm high energy. I get to a spot early. I love to fix things. What's my weakness? High energy, get to a spot early, love to fix things. And so in my zeal to fix, I may be stepping on someone inside the organization. I may not be delegating. I may be micromanaging. So I think those same areas that make you a good mentor to an individual also help you to become a very good mentor with an organization.
How different is it, Rocky, coaching a team versus building an organization?
I tell you, they're somewhat similar, because when you're building a team, you're trying to understand everyone's role and responsibility. And what you're trying to do is allow individuals to become part of your team, not to lose their individuality, but to understand that their individuality has to be within the confines of the organization. I learned this during my days at UPS when I was responsible for the UPS store. We purchased it as mailbox, et cetera, and rebranded to the UPS store. But the biggest thing I learned there was we had over 5,000 franchisees who were individual entrepreneurs, now part of a large organization. We wanted them to keep their entrepreneurial spirit, but they had to do it within the confines of the organization. I think that's the same thing as a mentor at building your team.
Rocky, for students who come from a non-traditional business background or have a great idea, what sort of boot camp-like strategies can you give them to either advance their idea or be ready to work for a startup?
The first thing that's going to help you is the thing that I always tell people, which is the biggest thing I know is what I don't know. And so by you understanding what it is that you don't know, that's going to be one of the strengths of your success. The second thing is, don't be afraid to ask, because you're asking for help. So give a quick example. If I'm running a company, the biggest thing I know is I'm not the CFO. What I do understand is that finance, is the language of business. So I have to find the right CFO. I never view asking for help as a weakness. You have a great idea. That's the biggest thing you need when you start a company. So, okay, you nailed that. but never sell yourself short. You got the idea. That's what you need to start a business. I wish I had the ideas that you had. I can help you run the business, but I'm not sure I can come up with the ideas that you do.
Reflecting on all of your franchisees from mailboxes, etc., / the UPS store, were your most successful ones from traditional business backgrounds or people who just admitted what they didn't know and wanted to learn?
Oh no, it's the latter. It's the people that wanted to be successful. They wanted to own their own business. They wanted to grow their own business, but they were never afraid to raise their hand and say, "Hey, look, I don't really understand the P&L side of things. Can you help?" Or I may need help with the marketing communication side of things. And those are the people you had the most respect for, right? Because they were so good at what they did. And then they realized, you know what? I'm a center fielder. The minute you put me in the pitch, things aren't going to go real well.
Rocky, who do you use as your mentor these days?
Well, I got to tell you, it's my wife. I got to tell you, she's wonderful. My greatest business lesson came from my wife.
And what was that?
It's interesting. So we go out to dinner one night, and we have 4 children, 4 grown kids, and the woman says to Debbie, "Hey, who's your favorite?" So Debbie says, "I don't have a favorite." And I'm sitting back, I'm thinking, I want to hear how she answers this. She goes, "I don't have a favorite. They're all my favorite." The woman goes, "Come on, it's impossible." And then Debbie said something that was so thoughtful, so insightful, and is my greatest lesson. That was, she said, "They're all my favorites because each of them gets what they need when they need it." Now think about that. Each of them gets what they need when they need it. If I had a seasoned CFO who really knew their job, they didn't need me to be asking them questions or following them around or micromanage them. What they needed me was let them fly, give them the authority that goes with the responsibility. So I didn't spend a lot of time with them, but they thought they were the favorite because I was leaving them alone. And if I had a director of sales who was brand new and needed me to help them close a deal or spend more time with them or go on sales calls, well, they thought they were the favorite because what they needed from me was my time. And so to me, that was my greatest business lesson as an adult. Everyone gets what they need when they need it. So they're all the favorites.
Love it. Rocky, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Rocky Romanella, executive mentor, CEO, board member, and someone who gives their team what they need when they need it, depending on the circumstances.
So who is Joe Scafone?
So that's my legacy story. I think leaders need to be thoughtful.
Doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
When choosing to get involved with a startup, where does mentorship end and angel investing begin? We're on location with Ben Littauer, who is a very successful angel investor, and welcome to the Language of Business.
Thanks, Greg.
So where does that line end between being a mentor versus an investor?
Well, I'm a seed stage investor. And so until I've written a check or gotten some of my colleagues to write checks, it's not an investment. It's just mentorship. It's just a lot of talk, a lot of trying to figure out product market fit, business models and such things. And once that's happened, it may be time to go out to the groups that I belong to and see whether there's some interest in investing.
So how many times do you force/cajole your startups, we hope, into revising their business plan and their cash flow projections?
The business plan that we invest in is never the business plan that works. But before we get to angel investing, we will often see a radical change in what the business plan is. And the business plan will also change depending on which investor you're trying to court. If you're courting a VC, it's a different business plan from courting me as an angel.
And in the early days, pre or post funding, how do you deal with your startups in terms of working with them to go from concept to fruition, product market fit, profitability, or something else entirely?
The most important thing is that at the stage that I invest, we're trying to go from concept to product. And concepts are cheap, products are hard. And so trying to get an understanding of the problem that's being solved and the way the solution fits into that problem and who's willing to pay for it are all of the components that go into making a product as opposed to just coming out with an idea.
So let's get back to the progression. You've met with the entrepreneur several times. They are successfully wending their way through the process, and maybe they're on Series B, which is a lot more advanced than angel funding. What do you do in that particular case? Does the mentorship continue? Do you then move to wanting to get paid or equity? Help us to understand that, please.
The hope is that I've established a personal relationship, and all of investing is about people. So I'm hoping that I've developed a personal relationship with the entrepreneur founding team. And usually that progresses from let's figure out what the right business plan is to let's figure out how to manage this team. Let's figure out how to manage the stresses of being a Series A founder and working on the human side of it rather than just the business side of it.
So let's assume, Ben, that the personal relationship continues and they want to offer you some form of compensation. Would you prefer a stipend, an hourly rate, C, all of the above, perhaps a choice of equity? Help us to understand that as well, please.
Well, at the stage that I typically am involved with the companies, cash is not usually on the table. That's why they're seeking funding, and it's usually small funding. So there's not going to be a lot of cash involved. I am very upfront that I don't need to be compensated. I do this because I get the opportunity to invest early if it's a company that's actually going to be one of the princes rather than one of the frogs. And so that's sort of my compensation there. That said, if someone offers me equity, and that has happened, I'm willing to take it. But I have to make it clear to the entrepreneur that this is not contingent on my landing funding or helping them land funding, because I'm not a broker. And I have to make it very clear to my colleagues that I have this relationship. And so I have an equity stake in the company prior to any investment. And that is just for conflict of interest rules.
Amongst all of the different entrepreneurs that you've worked with or seen, what would you say, Ben, is the single most common reason for failure?
There are two reasons that I sort of think things fail. The most obvious one that people shouldn't be too concerned about is dishonesty. If you're dishonest with your investors, that's going to come back and bite you if you get the money at all. But the other thing is that I'm very leery of top-down. This is a huge market. I much prefer to see how are you going to tackle this market. And so I'll see, well, we have a $14 billion market and there's no context for those numbers. And so I don't know how much of that you're going to take, whether you're going to have to take a little bit or a lot of it. And really, what is that money? So really understanding your numbers is very critical, and being able to explain them to me. And so many pitch decks just put some numbers up there and I don't know what they mean.
So by that assertion, we're guaranteed to get 0.01% of the market and then further guaranteed to make money after that, right?
That's absolutely right. And 0.01% of what market is the real question. And I often see people saying, well, if we just capture 30% of this market, whatever this market is, we'll be happy. And 30% of any market is hard to capture. If it's big enough to be interesting, someone else will be there and multiple people will be there.
I love the passion and the constant desire to learn something new. Ben Littauer, successful angel investor, thank you for joining us on The Language of Business.
Are you a problem solver? Do you see the big picture and the small details? Want to turn big data into big decisions? Take AI to the boardroom. Translate rocket science into the science of business? Build your career at digital speed with a Master of Science in Business Analytics. Be ready for careers like analytics consultant, data science, analytics strategist, data translator, BI analyst, technical business analyst. 10 months and you're in business analytics.
So many businesses want to have mentors but don't know where to find them, or even if they do find one, what to do with their advice. We're on location with Tim Nelson, who just celebrated his 5-year anniversary with SCORE, the international mentoring service, and one of his mentees, Erica Davis. Welcome to both of you to The Language of Business.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Why would people come to SCORE as opposed to an incubator, an accelerator, or using a paid consultant?
Well, We're all volunteer company. We actually have a rule: we can't invest in your company. So one of the things when you come to SCORE, you're getting advice, and that's all it is, and with nothing, that would make it be like, I'm trying to make money off of you, or I'm going to make introductions to people that are going to make money off of you. Everything we do is in your best interest, and that's why I think SCORE is so successful to this day.
And how does the organization pair you with a mentor? Do you have to be local? Do you have to have relevant past industry expertise? Help us understand that element of the puzzle, please.
Well, we take it from soup to nuts. So the first time you come in, we probably are doing a little bit of triage. And what we're trying to do is determine if I'm the right fit for you. And if I'm not, I'm going to find somebody who is, or I'm going to team up with somebody who is. And so that's probably the first meeting. And then what we actually supply people is we teach you how to do a business plan. We help you with your human resource issues. We help you with your accounting issues. We help you with your legal issues. And what I spend a lot of my time on is teaching people how to sell, how you get it onto your website, and how you get it into your materials, and how do you actually say it to people when you meet.
3, 6, 9 months into an engagement, how do you benchmark the success of your clients?
Well, we usually meet with our clients monthly. So the first thing I'm going to look at is we set goals after each meeting. Are you actually completing the goals? And if you are, then you have a chance. So if we're 6 to 9 months into it, we probably help you do some marketing research to determine whether the product is viable or the service is viable, because sometimes it's just not. It could be a great product, but you just can't turn it into money. And the other thing that I'm going to do at least a 12-month cash flow, what the startup costs are, what your fixed costs would be, and how would you get to your break-even point? How many sales of your service or product would you have to make to get to break-even? And then let's start setting goals on how much money you'd like to make.
Thank you. Let's bring Erica into the conversation. What exactly does your business do?
My business is a women-owned development company that can be getting a project and development from the ground up, or it can be a complete rehabbing the project and then holding it for rents and adding it to our portfolio. And we also do fix and flips.
So what specific services outside of building your website are you looking for from someone like Tim?
Tim helped me develop my business plan. I also work with someone within SCORE named Margaret, and she helped with creating a strategic marketing plan. Tim and me right now is creating a performer for all of our properties, which shows the cash flow. As he mentioned before, he wants business to say, how much money are you making? How much money are you spending? What is your profit and loss? So we know that as business owners, but sometimes you actually don't put it on paper, and you need someone to help you put the information on paper. So if I'm going for funding for a new project, I have everything that the bank is looking for.
They say that the value of anything you get for free is potentially suspect. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night wondering what you could have gotten or might get in the future if you started paying for customized consulting services?
So I was at the point when I was like, the city of Boston may take too long to create a website. I can look into paying someone. However, sometimes you got to take advantage of free resources. So I had to take a step back, and Tim was like, hold up, let's see if we can get you to get the website for free. So I believe that if you can get it for free, take advantage of it. And sometimes you just got to be patient enough and believe that it's all going to work out.
Tim, what message would you have for people who might be too proud or too shy to actually reach out to help, not only to SCORE, but other similar organizations?
Well, I'm going to quote Ted Lasso here. Be curious and not judgmental. That's what SCORE is. We're very curious about what you're trying to do, and we're going to dig into as much detail as we possibly can, but we're not going to judge you. And when I look back at running my own business, I wish I had somebody just to talk to that didn't judge me, that wasn't part of my business or part of my family, that I could just have a good conversation where I would get good input back. And that's what we do. The other thing that we do is we have 11,000 volunteers across the country. Anything you could need, I'll find somebody that can help you if I can. It's a free resource, and I would use it as much as you can. I've had clients from my first day at SCORE, I still have to this day.
Very inspiring. Congratulations and best wishes for your continued success. Tim Nelson, mentor, Erica Davis, mentee. Thanks to both of you for joining us today on The Language of Business. When you go to start a company that focuses on tutoring, what is your first order of business? Training the teachers or focusing on the students? We're joined with CEO and co-founder of INTA Tutoring, Ben Reydler, and welcome to The Language of Business.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Ben, what is INTA Tutoring?
INTA Tutoring is a college peer tutoring platform, and the emphasis is that you're being tutored by students at your exact university that have taken your exact course and aced it, since a lot of the tutoring options out there are pretty general and focus on just math or econ. Whereas if you go to Boston University, you're being tutored in that exact class by someone who has aced it.
And do you ever follow up to see how the mentees did in these classes?
Yeah, through our initial feedback surveys, when we first launched at Boston University, we would routinely speak to both students and tutors, and the students were getting A's left and right. I sent out surveys, and the overwhelming majority was at least an A- or above in either individual exams or overall course grade.
When you first started INTA, what was your primary objective? Finding the teachers or finding the students?
So my biggest worry was finding the teachers, and that turned out to be the easiest part of it all. And the hardest part was definitely finding the students or getting the name out there. We realized quickly that we had a really high retention rate. Like right away, students who took one lesson would buy either 1, 5, or 10 right away within the same day. And so our issue was getting our name out there, and that was kind of the main emphasis since then.
And does INTA mean anything special?
Yeah, it stands for I need the A+.
Terrific. And what are the qualifications for the teachers? Are they students who had to get an A or an A- in the class, or anybody who happens to be a junior or senior or maybe even a grad student?
So the qualifications are, as long as you're a student that has taken and provided proof of taking the course and receiving an A- or above in that course.
Ben, where does the tutoring stop and the mentorship start?
So that's a great question. So I actually have a great example of that. Early on, when we were doing customer, feedback and getting surveys and in-person interviews from both our tutors and our students to kind of assess, what we should work on, what we should change, maybe pivot to. And one story kind of really touched me, where a student went on to take a lesson with a tutor, and the tutor sent her over her extensively detailed study guide. And the tutor would go above and beyond, not only tutoring, but also mentoring. She would send her homework help and study guides, and they were able to form a pretty close bond throughout the semester. And she actually took that tutor again for Econ 102 the semester after.
Relationships gel over time. How many sessions does it take for empathy, trust, and safety to gel together between the tutor and his, her, or their student?
I would say it's definitely hard to calculate the exact number of sessions that it takes for that trust and empathy to come in. But once a student has had their first or even second lesson and they were able to work with the tutor and see if their personalities match, if that student then requests follow-up lessons with that tutor, then you can tell that something is working there, because we have many options available for every subject. And so you can easily switch tutors. But if you're getting along with the tutor and they're helping you, and they help you on that first midterm, and you buy a 10 lesson pack and routinely use them again for the second midterm or maybe even final, then you can definitely tell that there's some kind of deeper level of mentorship or deeper level of help going on there.
Terrific. Ben, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ben Reydler, the CEO and founder of I Need the A+ or INTA Tutoring.
Support for the Language of Business is from Boston University Questrom School of Business. We're also available as a podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for watching.